Okay, welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Trustees to discuss strategic planning. We have our consultants here with us tonight to facilitate. I'll call the meeting to order at 6:06 p.m. Let's do roll. Trustee Canova. Trustee Fairchild. The button's on the bottom. No, underneath. You have to push the button. Yeah. Okay, she's here. Trustee Muirhead. Here. Trustee Rotterman.
Here.
Trustee Ryan is absent. Trustee Watanabe.
Here.
And I am here.
No, you have to.
May I please have the introduction of our interpreter?
Good evening, everyone. Buenas noches. Mi nombre es Catherine Hertel. Mi compañera Verónica Adams y yo vamos a ser las intérpretes en español de esta noche. Bienvenidos a la reunión de la mesa directiva del Distrito Escolar Unificado de Santa Clara. Esta reunión está siendo transmitida en el canal de español de Zoom. Para escuchar esta sesión en español, oprima el botón que dice Interpretación en su pantalla y seleccione el lenguaje de español. En este menú también puede seleccionar la opción de silenciar el audio original en inglés. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. We'll now have the pledge led by Trustee Rotterman.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Thank you. The mission of Santa Clara Unified School District is to provide equitable, engaging, and innovative educational experiences so that each student thrives in a global society. The vision of Santa Clara Unified School District is that our graduates are resilient, future-ready, lifelong learners who think critically, solve problems collaboratively, and are prepared to thrive in a global society. Santa Clara Unified School District acknowledges that our schools are on the traditional lands of the Tamian Nation, the Aboriginal American Indian tribe of Santa Clara Valley. We pay respect and thanks to their people, both past and present. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Rotterman.
Motion, a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes 6-0 with Trustee Ryan being absent. Guidelines and policy for public comment at a board meeting is our board policy 1313 is our civility policy. This policy is intended to promote mutual respect, civility, and orderly conduct among district employees, parents, and the public. This policy is not intended to deprive any person of his or her right to freedom of expression, but only to maintain, to the extent possible and reasonable, a safe, harassment-free workplace for our students and staff. In the interest of presenting district employees as positive role models to the children of this district, as well as the community, SCUSD encourages positive communication and discourages volatile, hostile, or aggressive actions. The district seeks public cooperation with this endeavor. The board understands that the First Amendment provides strong protection for speech. However, the board expects that all speech and expression will comport with norms of civil behavior on district grounds, in district facilities, during district activities or events, and in the use of district electronic digital systems and platforms. Okay, our topic tonight is strategic planning. I don't know if there's any comment in the room regarding the strategic planning. If not, I will turn it over to our consultants. Okay.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Julie Half, and my colleague with me is Valerie Pitts, and at home is Diane Siri. And the three of us were here in the boardroom with you just a year ago, talking about your next superintendent and helping the board make that decision and bring in candidates for the superintendent's position. So we're very happy and pleased to be back to help with the strategic planning. So as the board knows, but the public may not, we are, all three of us are retired superintendents. We do work with other school boards. We do coaching and we do board work, workshops like we're doing tonight. And we're also experienced in recruitments. So we're happy to be here, and I want to recognize the hard work that Santa Clara is doing right now. I think your staff has done an amazing job. We're going to talk about what we've been doing, and we can go into more detail about that, but it's an impressive group of talented educators that are here. I think the board has some tough decisions ahead of them, and you've been working very hard. I know everyone was here until very late last night. And I want to compliment Dr. Wright for his wisdom in looking at the strategic plan, knowing that next year is going to be different. And we've really got to start focusing our efforts. And so we'll go into more detail about that. Valerie?
Great, thank you. And I would just like to echo how nice it is to be back here, working in the district on this important topic of strategic planning. As Julie mentioned, thank you. As Julie mentioned, as superintendents, we do have experience with this, and we've been there, but it changes all the time. And it's important to stay dynamic and keep looking at what's working and what's not, and moving forward. So we're excited to be here tonight to talk to you a little bit about that. Nope, I'm gonna go back one more slide there. One of the things that we always like to do before we get into the meat of the workshop tonight is to just do a little bit of an opener with you, quote, icebreaker. As Julie mentioned, we know how hard you all have been working this past year, these past few months and last night. So I'd just like to start by asking each trustee to think of something in the past few days that you've appreciated. It could be something from last night. It could be something from something that you attended last weekend, and then something that you're looking forward to tonight. So just 2 comments. You know, something positive, something that you've appreciated over the past week, and something that you're looking forward to. You mind if we start with you, Vicki?
Well, my thing that I have appreciated this last week, it's very easy to choose, and that was the fact that I finally got to leave Bernie home. That was what I named my oxygen machine. And got past my last breathing test, and so I could go untethered for the first time in 3 months, which I didn't realize how freeing that would feel. But it was incredibly amazing the first time I walked into a room and could actually close the door. And if you have children, you understand how important that is. As far as something I'm looking forward to, I've per doctor's orders have been really restricted on getting out. And so whenever I'm able to get out in a situation like this where I'm able to social distance, I just love connecting with people. It's not the same on the screen, and it's just good to be with other humans, wonderful people. Thank you.
Kathy Watanabe, I represent trustee area 2. I would say, well, there's been a lot of excitement in Santa Clara this week. I think we're basking in the glow of hosting the Super Bowl, and which went off very successfully. And so I think everybody's been very excited to know that that is behind us. And just looking forward to see how that's going to, I guess, have an impact on the city and the school district, and in terms of finances. And so I would say that's probably it. And then just being here to talk about, the right sizing that we're going through. I know it's very difficult, but in a way, I look at it as like a rebirth of some sort for the district, because I feel like we're just starting starting over in a little bit, and in a way, and looking at the future, and how we can all work together to make things better for the district, as well as our families, and most importantly, our students, because they do come first. Thank you.
I'm trying to think of something good from the last week. And I don't know. I'm looking forward to going to sleep tonight. But for as far as tonight, I'm looking forward to really having a good conversation about our vision for the district moving forward with Dr. Wright as our new superintendent. You know, all the superintendents have different visions for the district, and the strategic plan should reflect that superintendent and what they see for us as a district. So I'm looking forward to tackling that tonight. Yeah, that's it.
So I've been on somewhat of a whirlwind tour. I just got back from Cabo 48 hours ago, which I had to come back because we apparently had a school board meeting that I had to attend. And on Thursday, I have Michael McFaul, the U.S. ambassador to Russia, speaking at my Rotary Club that took me 6 years to convince him to talk to us. So I'm really excited about that. As far as the schools go, you know, this may sound corny, but I really appreciate the opportunity to work with such dedicated and experienced professionals. And it's at multiple levels. I mean, obviously, it's easy to see what happens when we work with like the superintendent, Marshall, and I'm going to get in trouble because I can't mention everybody's name quickly enough. But also our labor partners, what? Jody. Yeah, and Jody is the highlight of my life. But at any rate, also our labor partners, you know, the amount of time they dedicate, they put in and work on this, don't always agree, but that's okay. I need that counterpoint position because sometimes I'm blind. And as was demonstrated last night, the passion that our employees have, what they do, when you go onto school sites and you experience these, it's amazing to me what they do. I could never teach in a classroom like that. There'd be kids locked in the closet. You know, I would just don't have the right temperament for it. So for me, that's very impressive. So I really appreciate that opportunity to have that interface and to work with these people, to learn from them. I've been doing it for 22 years now. I'm a tiny bit smarter, but not much. I can't hold a candle to most of these guys. So thank you.
Jody Muirhead. In addition to this little football game that we had last Sunday, it was my mom's 90th birthday. And so over the course of about a week, I hosted several birthday parties for her because when you're 90, it's not just one, and totaling about 300 people. So it was a big deal for the family, and I had a lot of family visiting. So that was pretty amazing. And then the other part of that was in amongst all that, I've really thrived on talking to a lot of people in the district over the last several weeks, but especially over the last week, parents and staff who don't know, they don't know all the details and they have a lot of questions. And I really appreciate that they're trying to engage because so often I feel like we make decisions in this room and nobody's paying any attention. And it's like, wow, this is a big decision and there's nobody in the room. So I really appreciate that we're making some really big decisions and people are actually paying attention and they're asking questions and they're giving their thoughts. And I think that that is a really, really good thing for us as a board, or at least for me. And then with all these decisions, I appreciate that today we're going to get out of those details and look at such a bigger picture for where we are headed over the next few years. And it's really easy to get bogged down right now, but there is still the kids who will be with us and that need a good education. And so as much as we don't like the details of what we're going through, we still need to be thinking about what happens next. And that's what I'm hoping to get out of today.
So many, and it's nice when we do this because we rarely get this chance, but congratulations to Vicky, getting off the oxygen. That's such a huge thing. And Kathy, the city did a fabulous job with it. I mean, you can't imagine it being done more perfectly than the way the Super Bowl was handled. What an incredible event. So it's nice to hear all the, and your mom's 90th birthday. My gosh, that's incredible. So many good things. For me, what makes me happy tonight is that you're here. That makes me very happy. I'm confident that we're going to be moving in a really productive direction. And then with the decisions we have in front of us, and Damon and I have talked about this, but this is so much a part of the decision making we're doing. If the decisions we make have no relationship to what you're putting in front of us here, we're completely lost. I mean, the decisions we make in terms of our budget is critically connected to where we're going strategically as a district. So this is really, really important information that you're giving us and guidance. And so this is something that I'm very much excited to learn and get some thoughts and to see how this will connect, because I don't think the budget decisions we make should be done in a blind fashion. It should be done in a very strategic way.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Dr. Wright, would you like to add to that?
Working mic. I have two microphones and neither one work. I just want to just reiterate the commitment in this room. We do have some tough decisions ahead of us, a lot of hard work that requires time and commitment. And here we are. We were here till 1:15 in the morning yesterday, and we're back here today to do this important work. I also appreciate our executive cabinet through this process. I'm sure they're tired of me sending those text messages that we need to huddle because that means we need to meet. And we've given up Sundays, like 6 hours on a Sunday to sit down and do this important work, and it's greatly appreciated. So I just appreciate the commitment of our team and also our community for our organization at large.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Really appreciate hearing from you. And President Lieberman, are there any other logistics that we should be considering as we move through the evening?
No, we'll just follow your lead in terms of facilitating the discussion. And then if you need my help in directing or calling on people, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm happy to defer to you so I can participate in the process. So they know. Yeah,
What time is this?
9:30.
Can I also suggest that the rest of the staff just make sure your mic's on before you actually get ready to speak? Gotta push that little button on the bottom. You've all done it.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you. And we'll be moving forward. And we'd like to begin the conversation about our strategic planning and the work that we'll share with you tonight with Dr. Wright leading us in his discussion of his final report, 100 days.
And starting conversations with the board and our educational partners through the 100-day listening and learning campaign that we did in the fall, it was very clear, probably the thing that rose to the top was that we needed a North Star. And that came from all of our educational partners. We have people who are working hard, who are doing great things. We have a lot of solid plans within our district. I guess the analogy would be that we're rowing a boat really hard, but we're all rowing in a different direction and people feel like they're spinning. They need some North Star to point to so that we can de-silo our organization and move forward together so we can do great things for students. That was very evident. I think that we're very fortunate in our district that over the last year and a half or 2 years, we have a lot of input that we've gathered. Our consultants that are working with us today, they were leading our superintendent search, and they collected a lot of data through the 100-day listening and learning campaign. We collected a lot of data. We have on our website, if you looked at Vision 2035 and the other goals and plans that we have a great starting place. So as we enter this process, we didn't feel the need to necessarily start from scratch because we had so much great data as a foundation for us to start this process today. So I'm very excited. I'm looking forward to our work because I think this is going to guide our district moving forward.
Thank you. And we'll be referring back to a few of the things that were in the 100-day plan report. As you go to, you'll see that, that connection being made. So thank you, Dr. Wright. So we're going to just talk a little bit about what to expect for the evening in terms of outcomes. We're going to talk to you about the process that we've engaged in reviewing the work that this district has done with all of many plans and just the incredible amount of work you'll hopefully will come to understand our process. We're going to introduce to you some sort charts and take a look at the way that we have organized this sort of first look at summarizing all of these documents and reach what we're calling conceptual agreement. And we'll talk to you about that. It's not a formal vote, but you'll hear more about that. We're going to talk to you about the vision and mission and confirm revisions or not. Time permitting, discuss the student first comment. And so it's a narrow group of outcomes tonight, but we feel it's an important start. And what we're looking for from you is sort of, yes, agreement, we're going in the right direction, and here's some more input.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk a little bit about our process and how we've approached this. When Damon came to us and said, you know, we're looking for this North Star, we have so many plans in the district, so many goals, so many priorities. And how do you focus everyone so you are rowing in the same direction? And so it started off that we had a list of documents that we got from Jen, and she gave us about 20 plans. And I'm saying 20 plans, some of them were 100 pages long. I saw a slide deck that was 174, and it was on my list to review. But the three of us went through each one of them. And as we started going through them, we were asking for more and more plans because we'd read about some plan that was embedded in a MTSS plan or into the LCAP, and we didn't know what that was. So we kept getting these, and what we did was we took them, we read them, and then we made notes on every single plan. And we tried to pull out as many goals as possible. And if you've looked at all the plans, there are goals that are embedded in narratives, and there are goals that are highlighted, and some are called priorities. But we tried to get all of those together, and then we put them together. So we started thinking about, you know, of these, we turned out with, you know, almost 60 plans, I think. We were looking at some presentations that were done to the board. We were looking at how teachers were working together in curricular areas, the budget, some of your big things. Those are a couple. If you're blind, you can read. I mean, you know, you have to have really good eyesight to do that. But that's where we started with those. And then we went down. One of the last things we asked for was, wait a minute, we haven't seen the WASC reports. So we looked at the WASC reports at the end. And what we saw were literally hundreds of goals, hundreds of priorities. And so we thought, how can we put these together so it's going to make sense? And we started talking about, well, what if we had buckets? What are the buckets? So, you know, she was reviewing some plans, I'm reviewing others, Diane others, and we put all of them together and we said, how can we look at these buckets? And we thought of them as instruction and fiscal. And those were two that we said, those are really easy. We know we're going to have those two. How about, we saw a lot of things about wellness and student well-being. So what if we had another bucket for that? But we still couldn't fit them all in. And then we went back to Damon's 100-day report, and he had some headings that we liked. But before we got to the headings, we started thinking about, we went from those buckets, and I started thinking about this giant funnel. And you have all these plans that are sitting on shelves, and you have all these goals in there, and they're all coming into the funnel. And you've got this narrow opening, and you're trying to spit it out. You've got your mission, and you've got your core values, and you've got a mouthful of a vision statement. And how does the staff know what is most important? And next year, with fewer people, it's going to be even more important to be strategically aligned. And so we went back, we looked at Damon's 100 days, and he had some headings for us that we thought we could use. And he had 5 themes. Along with that wellness, he also had systems, and he had equity. And we had great debate between the three of us about equity and where it belonged. And during this time, during these last 3 weeks, when we've been reading all of these plans, we've met with Damon weekly, if not twice a week on some weeks. But we talked about equity and we said, we don't really see that as a separate bucket. We see that equity has to be embedded into every area that we talk about. And so we went from 5 themes that he used, 5 themes, we went from 5 themes down to 4. And we found that as we had those 4 themes, then it was easier for us to start putting them into these different lists. And that's what you're going to see tonight, is that we came up with that. Our goal is on May 5th to come back here. That's the next meeting we have with you for a study session, is to come back to you with a final report. And we want to get it down. Damon has the idea that we can get it down to 1 or 2 pages. Maybe we can. Everyone in the district would know what the priorities is, what the North Star is. That's the goal. And I can't say enough about the need for staff to be able to have clear direction. You know, that every principal knows what the plan is. Everyone in the business department knows, everyone, and the parents would start to learn that. Hello, Michelle. Welcome. So that would be it. Our next step after what we've done so far, and you're going to see what we're working on right now, and we want a lot of input from you tonight. We will be working with the cabinet members, because we'll talk about that as we get into the charts that we've made, that there's 2 areas that we really have to have staff talk about, what the actions are and what the activities are, whether they agree with all of the actions that are there. But we took everything that you're going to see on the charts, and you may have already had time to look at them. They were posted last night. Maybe you haven't, but I've got hard copies for you today. We'll be talking about everything that we have on those charts came directly from your plans. So it isn't like we put anything extra in there. Everything is coming from plans that we read about. And we were looking for those common themes. Like, what did we hear over and over again? What were the things we heard most frequently? And so we've put it together. We're going to share that with you tonight. So let's look at the 4 North Star statements. You're probably pretty familiar with them. Oh, wait, I
They're right
didn't
here.
do,
They're
I skipped my thumbs up though. Sorry, excuse me. You should be looking. Well, okay, just show the, okay, the 4.
The 4 is back here.
Here it is. Okay. So we have the 4 statements. The first one is academic excellence and instructional coherence. So when we started looking at all the goals that we had in the area of academics, we really felt like, especially because it had the word instructional in there, that those goals fit together nicely. That was the easiest one. Fiscal stewardship and organizational alignment. Many goals in that area. And then the well-being, what we were originally calling as student well-being, came into his with safe, inclusive, and courageous climates. And then the 4th one was systems, communication, and accountability. So those are the 4, went from buckets to a funnel to the 4 statements that Damon had used. And we asked him if it was okay for us to use that. So, and he thought it was. So that's where we are on that. So conceptually, I'm just going to ask you if that makes sense to you, or maybe we need to go a little further in this, but those were the 4 areas that we were thinking we would use as buckets. And we're just trying to get it focused down, and you're going to see what we did. So tonight, when we say you're not voting in any tonight, but we want to know that we're on the right track. And when we met with Damon, I think it was 2 meetings ago, we showed him the idea. We didn't want to just give you long lists. And we said, does it make sense to put it in a chart? Because we wanted to check in with him to make sure that made sense for him. Somebody said it tonight, that it's really a vision that the superintendent holds. And that's what we're trying to do is take his vision and put it on paper. So we have the 4 statements. And if you, as we ask for your agreement on this, it would be thumbs up, you agree, thumbs to the side, you have a question, and thumbs down as you cannot live with it. That would be something that really goes against it. So for the North Star statement, just really an easy one we'll start with. Can you agree with those 4 themes that we have. And it's the board, yeah. Okay, your question, Andy. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Values. What are the big rocks? Big things you have to accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
It does an analysis. Keep that. Put the sand and the gravel in first, get the rocks in first, sand, gravel, turn around.
Mm-hmm.
So you identify the big rocks, and those to me would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just not 100% sure. Let's put these statements together. But at some point in here, what are we gonna look like when we get where we're trying to go? What does the end look like? And we define what we want the end to be. That piece about what we want it to look like, learn about. So, and it may well be that there's nothing wrong with all the North Star statements that you have up there. Also, most North Star statements are single. Pardon? Oh my, so sorry. I turned it off to stop the echoes. Do you think I should repeat it all? Okay, so, just to review what I said earlier, since I had the mic off, my apologies. A real quick question about the process that we're going through. I do like, some of the concepts that Stephen Covey's put out. One of the things is to begin with the end in mind, so you know what it is you're trying to accomplish. When you get to where you're going, you know what that's going to look like. Also, he's a lot of other concepts like the big rocks concept, et cetera, which is fairly close. Also, North Star statements, the ones I've seen where they've done that, they're able to get a single item as a single North Star that encapsulates all of the what you're trying to accomplish as a goal. So it becomes more like a mission statement than what we have here. I'm okay with this. It's just a different name for, there's more than one kind of North Star statement. This could be fine. We have multiple North Star statements. But I'm mostly interested, the piece I'm the most concerned about is we're making plans to do stuff, but I want us to know what we're trying to accomplish. Where are we going to be when we succeed?
Okay.
And over what time do we give ourselves for success?
Mm-hmm. So I think you'll see as we go through the process, this is kind of an intermediate step. And we are going to be working on vision and mission. We won't have 4 statements, but right now we're looking for those themes where we can put all the goals that we already have. Damon's idea is you're going to have one North Star. Is that correct, Damon? Am I stating? Okay. And that's what we're working towards. But we had to take those hundreds of goals and priorities and filter them some way and figure out for each area, like, for instance, academic excellence, you have really hundreds in there. So what are the most important things? We have to keep breaking it down.
I think the thing we ended up doing this twice where we basically confirmed the norm. Okay. We did this. If you ask everybody what they should do, they tell you what they're familiar with. That's the information you get in. So you do end up with a good plan because it's something that's currently working, but you don't make large changes. You don't make incremental, transformative change. I apologize. I think my brain is still last night at 1 o'clock in the morning. But at any rate, that's sort of my concern. I want to make sure, because I think if you do it the other way around, where you start off saying, look, this is utopia, this is what we want to accomplish, and you go back, you may find that it affects some of this, how you're going to get there. Maybe not.
We actually, thank you, Andy, just great comments. We actually spent some time talking. Do you remember, Julie, Diane and Julie and I, about normally this activity would begin with looking at the vision and mission, exactly what you're saying. And we talked a lot about given the numbers of plans and the amount of really excellent work that's been done in this district, maybe we start first with digesting that. So maybe when we get to vision and mission, we'll be engaged, excited about, this is the work that we've already done. Our job is to summarize and point it in the same direction so there are no random arrows. So we talked a lot about that, Andy, and we're not going to forget about that, because you're right.
Pass, so I'll give you an answer.
Jody?
Well, you asked if we had a thumbs up on these, and
Mhm.
I think that these are great statements. What I've been trying to, and recognize that we didn't have any time to prepare because we just saw this materials last night during our board meeting.
Mhm.
So I don't know, I took a quick glance at it, but I'm a little concerned, like what's missing. You know, you said you went through all these things and you pulled out equity as being all over the place. And I'm just trying to rack my brain is like, is there something else that's missing? And I haven't come up with something at this point, but it's only been a few minutes. So I kind of want to, hold off on committing to these
Okay.
for myself
Mhm.
until we've had a chance to dig into the topic a bit more and maybe get some other ideas and
Right.
see if everything that we are talking about fits.
Right.
one of these.
And when we were working off of our list that we had originally, we were trying to find the ones that didn't fit. And we really found that they all fit into these 4 buckets, at least what we experienced so far. Now, you may came up with something that doesn't, but from the plans and everything we pulled out, because we didn't pull it out saying we're looking for instructional practices, we're looking for fiscal stewardship. We went and said, what are the priorities in each plan? And sometimes they, like I said, they were embedded in the narrative. And other times they were listed up at the top of the page saying, these are our goals. But a lot of times you start reading the plans and they may have goals right at the top, but then you go through the plan and there are so many priorities that are listed there. And I do have to say, and I probably skipped over this too quickly, you have some fabulous documents in the district that are aligned. It's just there's so many of them. And for, a teacher in the classroom, they're not reading all of these plans. They need to know what is the gold nugget or the rock, in there, because there's so much else that's happening in a classroom every day. And that's what it's about. You want those goals to be in the classroom. So we will get to that. And the other thing is, this is a process. We're just starting. All we've done is read the plans. We haven't talked to anyone. Somebody said, well, what did you hear from people? We haven't talked to anyone yet, other than Damon and Jen, sorry. We've talked to both of them, but now we need to talk to the staff because they're the ones who are doing the work and implementing the plans.
Thank you.
Valerie, anything else?
Well, I just want to take a minute and then Vicki, we flashed the chart up there, but there was an awful lot of work that was going on with respect to getting us those plans. And there were literally I think we had between 65 and 70 plans that we looked at. So thank you, Jen, for organizing that. Thanks to every one of you on the cabinet and other directors that contributed and gave your plans and were patient with us when we said we didn't have access and they needed to grant us access. There was just a lot of hard work that went into that. So thank you. And it was our job to kind of comb through that and summarize. This is very high level summary.
I know, Vicki, one thing and then I'll get you. Okay. There are thousands of voices included in those plans. I mean, I was here when they were working on the literacy work last year and, the room was packed in here with teachers. And all of those people have helped to write the plans. We've had a lot of parents involved in a lot of different plans. So that was the other part that I did not recognize and I should have, is that, it really represents not only work of staff, but also of your community. And Vicki, thank you for being patient.
You're welcome. My first reaction in seeing this is I appreciated the simplicity and how easy it was to digest the statements. I mean, I know what academic excellence is and I know what instructional coherence is. There's nothing to unpack in those statements. And I'm sure they're just I don't know if they're in order of importance, but for me, we are a school district and academic excellence and instructional coherence needs to be one of our top priorities because that is what we're here to do. But I appreciated the simplicity, the accessibility, like Oh, I know what that, I can imagine what that
Mhm.
means and what's underneath that. So thank you. We've seen those plans over time, and that's a lot of plans.
And a lot of times you have to write these plans in great detail for the federal government or for the state or, whoever the plan is going to. So it's not that the staff is putting in, something that isn't used. To get the money, you have to do the plan. So that's what happens. But the other thing we found as we were reading the plans, there were a lot of terms that need to be defined. Because when you say, I know what academic excellence, instructional coherence is, and I think those two are a good example. Most people do. But when you get into some of the terms that are in some of the plans, like equity, parents may have a very different feeling of what equity is compared to a staff member or a classroom teacher or the superintendent. So that's one of the recommendations that we're going to talk about later is how do you go about helping people to understand the terms that are used.
Okay, okay. No, I like the simplicity too. The second one, fiscal stewardship and organizational alignment, that's what we're in the midst of right now. That's what kept us up till pretty late last night or this morning. On the item that says safe, inclusive, and courageous climate. Now, safe is there's so many things that we could think of under
Mhm.
that word. Safe campuses.
Mhm.
We live in a dangerous time, obviously. Courageous climate. I could interpret that in different ways. Staff members being courageous, students being courageous, board members being courageous. Could you maybe expand a little bit on that item? Safe, inclusive, and courageous.
Damon, would you like to?
This plan months ago.
Years ago.
Years ago. Yeah, of course, we want to make sure that all of our programs and all of our campuses are safe and inclusive for all student groups, that they can access the programs that we're providing. And the courageous climate part is sometimes it's going to take the bystanders to be courageous enough to stand for those that need to access our programs. So whether it's a staff member, whether if it's a student, being courageous enough to stand for those that need support.
Okay, someone else? Andy.
So I don't want to beat this to death. The North Star statement, you came from with students first. And the students first concept that you've put forward feels more like a North Star statement to me. Just that, students first, that all the rest of the things fall underneath, okay? I actually did take a stab at this. Don't sleep. But at any rate, and I came up with a set of North Star statements and a 2-page summary of what you guys put together. And in that one, it's very similar to what you've got. Excellent teaching in every classroom, fair opportunities for every student, safe and supportive schools, clear communication, accountability, responsible use of resources, as the ones I came up with. They're very close to what you have. And then underneath those, I've got some bullet points of what I mean by those. The one thing I do want to see us do when we get to the end of this,
Mhm.
I would like this to be, you brought something up earlier that I think is extraordinarily important. People can only retain so much information. It's got to be simple. I think this is very good. It's very simple. Easy to understand, easy to conceptualize, easy to retain. And I think whatever we have needs to have all of those attributes. And not this, the most recent one, but the one prior to that, we actually required it to be fit on one, I think it was 9x11 or maybe 17, piece of paper.
Mhm.
And we posted in every single classroom,
Mhm.
okay? So that everybody knew what we're doing. And so we've got a strategic plan, and everybody knew what the plan was. And then again, I think it's a Covey, it might be a Blanchard, but there's one where they say you make a strategic plan and you actually work it backwards. You start from the bottom and you work up, okay? And so everybody in the plane has their own. So if I'm a classroom teacher, I have my own strategic plan that's in concert with the district plan. And you know how to do that. And you have a process where you go up and down to make sure that they're in alignment and coherent. So I think I'm spending too much time on this because we haven't seen everything you're doing.
Yeah.
It may well be that you've done all this. And so all I'm doing is wasting time.
It's the beginning.
But I did want to do that. And I did like what you did with your students first, because I think that's a really important concept.
And for those of you that haven't seen all the documents, that's the end of tonight, but that's okay. You introduced it for us. That's good. Bonnie, did you have something else to add?
Well, maybe I'll wait because my comment is actually about this, that Andy's students first.
Mhm.
I'm going to be contrarian. I hate that. And I'll be happy to tell you why. I think that every school district is supposed to be students first. It's cliche and I hate it. If we're students first, it should be embedded in everything we do. It should be implied in our statements. We
Okay.
shouldn't have to say students first.
Mhm.
Plus the fact, I feel like it's meaningless without any kind of specificity about it. What does that mean? And is it students first over everything else? Is it over our staff's well-being? Is it over our district office? Well, I like to me, it's meaningless. And I feel like it creates more conflict than it actually provides any clarity of vision.
Okay.
Because to me, it can be used as a weapon to say, well, you're not doing this, so you're not students first. Or
Okay.
So do you understand what I'm saying? I like it as a concept, but I don't think a school district should have to say that they're students first. I think it should be embedded in everything they do and in their vision statement, their mission statement, their core values should reflect that they're students first.
Mhm.
If you have to say it, to me, you're not.
Mhm.
That's kind of where
All
I
right.
come from. So I'm going to quibble a little bit with
Okay.
my fellow trustee.
Okay. Go ahead, Michelle.
And I would just echo on that too, because there's lots of ways you could put students first, but if you're saying academic excellence, that's something that's very specific. There's, and I think students first, everyone could interpret in a different way. So I do think more specificity is probably useful.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Well, it's a good way to begin with just getting that out there. And we're going to move on and look at the charts. Now, I know you have the charts in your packet. Would anybody like hard copies? They're in the order that. There's 4 charts, so just stay on. We should skip right now and just talk about it. Some blind here. Agree. Okay. All right. So we're going to look at the first chart and I want to explain how we did this. So like I said, we had these long lists and we tried to find those cross-cutting themes in there that were similar. So remember, we're looking at all sorts of different plans from your LCAP to the school site plans to, you know, work that the teachers are doing around math at the secondary level. I mean, it's a wide variety of things. And the top thing we read in those charts, I mean, in those plans, was around equity and access. There's a lot in this district written around equity and access. And so we had all these things and we said, okay, how are we going to organize this? And so we took a stab at it and we said, why don't we have, and I think we came up with a different word and someone suggested to us, what about priorities? Because they're really not all goals, but we had priorities. So we've got the first column is priorities. And the most frequent priority is number 1, and that was equity and access. And we talked about, well, if equity and access is an inclusion, equity, access, and inclusion, if that's our priority, what is the belief statement for that? And so we wrote the belief statements, and they could be wrong. This is why we're bringing it to the board. But we're thinking for equity and access that if that's what you truly believe, all students, regardless of background, must have access to high quality instruction that leads to success. And we really were trying to keep it as short and simple as possible. We could put a lot of adjectives in there, a lot of verbs in there, but we didn't. We kept it there. So those really, the first two columns are really the boards. The priority and the belief. And then the action, I mean, you can look at that, you can scan through that. Those are what we're taking to staff to talk about. So, and then we have a fourth column that we want to talk to staff about. You know, should actions be there? What's the fourth column? Is it activities? Is it who's responsible? How do you want to break it down? And that's what we're going to get from the staff. So, yes. Yes, yes, metrics, of course.
That could be the
Mhm.
fourth column as well.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you flip to the back side, the second thing we heard most often was student achievement and success. So that would be the priority. People are looking in those plans for student achievement and success, and our belief. And we could start it with SCUSD believes, but we did just believe for this time. Student success is multidimensional and includes academic proficiency, wellness, because we see so much around wellness and the students in this district, engagement and life readiness. And some of it is talking about secondary school, and some of it is talking about transition from elementary to middle school. I mean, there's just a lot around readiness and movement there. And then, you know, I hate to read them all to you, but the third one was high quality instruction. That was the next thing we heard most frequently, curriculum and coherent systems. And this was something, the belief was, as we read them and we saw different areas where people were saying, you know, it's piloted in here and we're, you know, some schools are doing this and we haven't quite finished all of that. We said for the belief would be that quality instruction should not depend on the school or classroom. It should be consistent, aligned, and research-based district-wide. And that would be the belief that you have to have that as a priority. And then the staff would be working on the actions, the metrics, who's responsible, activities, whatever. And then, you know, I mean, I hate to keep going, but number 4 was professional learning. Improving student outcomes requires sustained investment in educator expertise and collaboration. The fourth one is around data. And you have an incredible amount of data. I don't know who's doing all those charts, Kathy, but you got a lot of data. And it's kind of sliced and diced every way you can think. You're following cohort groups, and I mean, it's amazing the amount of data here. But staff can only do so much. And like I made the point earlier, next year is going to be very different. You're going to have a smaller staff. So what is essential to have? You know, we used to say, you need to know, or it's nice to know. Do you really need to know that, or is it nice to know that? So, but data, of course, data should guide timely decisions, refine practice, and most important is improve outcomes and not exist in isolation. We do not want to be collecting data for data's sake, and we say that and hear that as teachers, but really we want to be collecting the most important data so that it affects what's happening in the classroom. So if I'm collecting data around, you know, their reading level, then it should change how I'm instructing the child once I have those results. And if it's not, if it's just data to be collected and put in a binder, it's not really useful data to be collecting. And that's why we want to talk to the staff about that. What is the most important data for them to have? Systems and support, that district-wide system of support ensures students and staff get the right help at the right time. And I believe your MTSS plan, multi-tiered systems of support, is really a very well-written document. I mean, it needs more, you know, we've got to get the alignment. We've got to keep getting, you know, teachers using it everywhere in every classroom, but you've got a great start. it's there. And then that shared vision, culture, and collective efficacy, the belief would be that sustainable improvement depends on alignment, trust, and a shared sense of purpose. So how about, I know you guys had a very late night, and, I'll go with your lead. But I think if you have things that you want to say here, this is a draft. That's why it says it's so big. It's where we're beginning. But those were the 7 themes that we found in those hundreds of goals and mission statements and all different things that came out of those plans. These were the 7 around, and I would agree with you, Vicki, that academic excellence and instructional coherence is very important in a school district. So being very clear about that.
So do you want us to respond to this first one?
You
Is
may,
that-
yes.
I just trying to follow your lead and make
Sure.
sure I'm following.
Mhm.
I actually had a reaction to number 3. And because as a parent in this district, I've experienced a lot of I feel have high quality instruction. What I think has been the struggle is the alignment of curriculum across, even within the same school, the same department, same course. And because it doesn't seem like we've done a good job at defining expectations at the district level of, we've talked about this, but I don't know how much has changed. We got rid of common assessments. And so there's not this very well established expectation.
Mhm.
And so I think that has led to frustration, misalignment, and I think it's totally on the district level that this has happened, because what we have provided, we've talked about, well, the curriculum isn't good. Why aren't we providing new curriculum? Why aren't we providing, why are we just okay with that? And teachers are trying to grasp from all different areas. And so there isn't the coherence that we would like, but I think it's on us. And so while I like this, I wanted to be clear that I feel like some of the issues that we've talked about over and over again come from a leadership error and not necessarily a teacher error. Does that make sense?
Mhm. It does. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Andy? Mike?
This is gonna be a problem for me. So 3 also grabbed my attention for the same reason did my fellow board member. Yeah, Vicky. And the common assessments or something, but I didn't like the phrasing, and I would want to see the word effective in there. So effective, high quality instruction. Sometimes people can have really phenomenal instruction, but it's not effective. It doesn't work. So you could say then it's not high quality. So it might be in the definition of what you do by high quality. But whatever it is, I want it to be effective. And I want us to have a measure of that effectiveness at some point. Say, okay, we're giving fantastic instruction. We don't know why they're not moving anywhere. I want to move. I think it's implied, but I've always had an issue with, under student achievement and success, maybe it's not that one, maybe it's the first one. I guess it's first one, equity. Where a lot of times we pay a great deal of attention to the regular kids and the special education kids, but we kind of ignore the gate kids. That's the old term. I don't know what new term is in vogue. The gifted and talented kids. Those children need to be challenged, and I want to make sure that for them, for it to be high quality instruction, it needs to be something that still challenges them. So I want, and to not do that's inequitable in my mind. So frequently they get left, they get ignored. Okay, well, they're doing good, so we don't need to worry about them, and so I do want to just say a word for gate. And then when I look at 5 under data, the last item, implement a circle of improvements. plan, do, study, act. I would like to see something a little more, and then this is maybe getting into the weeds, I don't know, but something a little more typical of what you'd see in a quality circle, where in a quality circle, you identify, analyze, and solve. Okay, so the act is maybe the process of solving, but the idea is you look at what's happening, you see if what's working right, what's not working right, you analyze why it doesn't work, and you find a solution for that. Okay, so that's why I use the word solve. I think that's enough for me for the moment.
Okay. Bonnie?
On the equity, access, and inclusion,
Mhm.
I generally like it. I think I like to see something about a commitment to addressing disparities that exists, like like eliminating barriers to achievement, and the allocation of differentiated resources based on need. So to Andy's point, so for the disadvantaged students as well as our higher achieving students, I'd like to see us have a differentiated resources that meet needs. And kind of as a corollary to that, ensuring access for all students to advanced coursework. So that our students aren't siloed, you know, that they're tracked on one track. Every student should have access to advanced coursework. And I think, I'd also like to see, you know, and so maybe it's like a personalized learning pathway, if there's a way, like, to do something like that. And, I think part of inclusion also, and I know MTSS is on here,
Mhm.
but relationship building structures that promote inclusion, that would kind of encourage bringing kids to the table that maybe have trauma or disproportionate challenges.
Mhm.
I guess they might trauma informed instruction or whatever they call it. I'd like to see us have that kind of empathetic inclusion piece embedded into access and inclusion and equity. Because I think that's an important piece
Okay.
with that.
Thank you. Michelle?
So, and this may be too early, and this is just kind of very generally, I really liked as we started off with some very clear North Stars for things, very, you know, and those may be revised or whatever. My only concern is, there's now, if you look at all of them, there's 28 different priorities. And so, that's where it's not about any one in particular, but I do worry as we have 28 priorities, and we've had that criticism before on previous plans, that if you've got 28 things you're trying to do, that means you're not going to do any of them.
So this is what you need to think about. Think
Okay.
about that funnel again.
Yeah.
So we had hundreds.
Right.
And now we're down to 28.
Okay.
So it's gonna get there. We're
Okay.
going to get there, but we
Yeah.
have to go through these steps, I think, to
Yeah.
get there.
Okay.
And as I'm listening to the comments that you're making, this is excellent for when we have our time with the staff, because a lot of that can be fit into those next two columns. So I appreciate the conversation. I'm taking down notes, and Valerie's taking down notes so that together we can put it together and remember all the things you said tonight. Kathy?
Okay, so going back to the high quality instruction, my comment may be incorporated in under the, depending on school or classroom quality instruction should be not depend on school or classroom. Would there be an opportunity to add something about the teachers, ensuring that the teachers have the professional development or what they need in order, let me finish my statement, please. let them have the ability to make sure that if we're going to have high quality instruction, that the teachers also have that high quality instruction as well to be able to achieve that goal.
Yes. Thank you. Jody, did I skip you?
Okay, you'd get to me eventually. So on the first one, equity, access, and inclusion, it says all students regardless of background. To me, regardless of background isn't needed. It should just be all students must have access to high quality instruction that leads to success. Because I think sometimes when we think about access, we're thinking just about like our EL learners or our newcomers or, you know, people who are traditionally disadvantaged. But I think all of our kids, like they may not even, you know, you may have a student who comes from, you know, a home that has advantages, but still doesn't understand the importance of things. And so I think all of our kids need support to get through school. It's not just our less advantaged students. So when you close those gaps, you shouldn't be bringing the top down. You should be bringing everyone up so that they're all doing better. And hopefully you can make the people, you know, the lower ones go up faster, but you just don't want to hold back some students and just focus on the others. So that regardless of background, that trips me up when I hear it. On the second one, the belief at the end, it says wellness, engagement, and life readiness. And the only thing I saw in the next column around life readiness, I was trying to figure out what you meant by that. And I see internships and mentorships and cultivate belonging. I think those are all good. I think different people will have different ideas about what that means. Like it used to be balancing a checkbook, but managing your finances, you know, that's become a thing at the state level now that they're looking at. And it's like, what are some of these things that kids are not getting at home that we want to make sure when they go out in the world after they graduate, that they understand about investing or something, or, you know, how to save for the future, or what, maybe more about like life readiness just seems like kind of a strange phrase.
Yeah. Okay. So, you know, we saw in the plans, sometimes they talk about college and career, you know, kids leaving school and going to college or going to career. Sometimes it said, go off and make life choices. So that's where we came up with that phrase. And I think it means after high school.
Okay.
You know,
So
like,
I think
what are you doing?
to me, it seemed like a specific thing, like
Okay.
teaching your kids how to do laundry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were thinking of it just in terms of being ready for life.
Mm-hmm. And we're just taking it out of the plans, you know.
Yeah, no, but I'm just trying to understand what these mean. And so to me, life readiness is a vague phrase. And
Okay.
so if you meant,
Good.
like we've used the college and career ready a lot,
Uh-huh.
to me, that is a better phrase than life readiness.
Okay.
Because it's more specific about, well, you're either gonna, you know, get a career or you're gonna go on to college and then get a career. And I think that's what we're preparing them for.
Okay.
We don't need to teach them how to do their laundry for the bulk of our students. But, well, I, as a parent, made sure, I mean, yeah. So anyways, so that's my thing about the phrase life readiness.
I do want to point out that the actions that are listed are just a few examples for the staff.
Yeah.
You know, you can't take the belief and find an action for each one because it's not there. Yes, Bonnie.
On equity and access, the fourth bullet, the implement equity audits and equitable funding. Does that encompass like data-driven equity? Like I feel like we do, as you said before, we have so much data. And I feel like you can use that data to really drill down to eliminate systemic inequity
Mhm,
by disaggregating the data.
mhm.
So is that what you mean?
That's what we'll talk to the staff about. I
Okay.
mean, it's out of a plan. Yeah, it's straight from a plan.
What? Yes? Okay.
Yeah, I think I had something similar in my plan, and it's just about looking at the data. They say if you look at your budget, you can tell what your priorities are. So I use that phrasing so that when we are looking at data, we're making equitable decisions on how we're spending our dollars, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jim, Andrew, sorry.
My microphone. So one of the things I worry a little bit, you already mentioned this is just suggestions. But one of the
Example.
areas that we've been really frustrated with, I've been frustrated with, maybe I should just phrase it that way, is that I've sat through meetings and we've had discussions about how to improve academic achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And we have great plans and everyone puts it forward and everybody has fancy words, MTSS and PBIS and all these different things. And it stays flat.
Mhm.
And what we end up seeming to do is what we always have done before, or a variant of it. Whereas it seems like for us to really make a change in the next few years in our academic achievement, we may need to do some things differently than we have been doing it before.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when we say, well, we'll implement MTSS, I think it's in one of these, the question is, should we be doing some kind of evaluation where we're looking at not just MTSS, we do PBIS, we don't do RTI, we don't do micro schools. There's a whole lot of different techniques that could be used. And so the question is, what do we do? Somewhere there should be a component in there saying, look, we're not going to be okay with the standard quo, standard, whatever that phrase is, status quo. There we go. We need to move this thing forward, and it needs to move forward aggressively. We need to find it, and we have, maybe the MTS 3 tiers aren't enough. Maybe we need to do something else. Maybe we need to have mandatory tutoring for every kid that isn't getting, a B or better. Which wouldn't be an MTSS model. I mean, because they would be not brought extra support at that level. So, I just think there has to be a component of urgency. And there has to be a component of, hey, look, we're not just necessarily going to do what we've always done. We may continue to do what we've been doing, but then we make supplemental changes, additions to that something. And one of the phrases that comes to mind, and this will be one that I probably will regret saying, in the military is no excuses. That kid's going to get A or B, no excuses. Whatever it takes, we're going to figure out how to make sure that kid gets what he needs to have. So, I just think we really need to, can't just be the normal, because the normal isn't working.
I think Jody, did you? Yeah, and then Jen.
Thank you. I had one more. And that is under number 3, the high quality instruction. I think our beliefs, and you've done a good job of this about them being aspirational and positive, like what we're looking forward to. And on number 3, when you start, the belief is saying quality instruction should not depend on school or classroom. Sounds punitive.
We talked about that too, but good. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, it just sounds
Yeah,
like
we
you're
did.
calling somebody out.
Mhm.
And I would rather
Turn it around to
turn
the
it
positive.
around and
Okay.
say, we should have quality instruction in all of our schools that's consistent, aligned, and research-based, something like that, but just spin it.
Okay.
Yeah. Quality instruction should be consistent. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jim.
No, overall, I really like this. And imagine when you get to column 3, you get input there, that'll probably spill over and inform column 1 and 2 also, not just what we're providing tonight. And just for context, do you want us to limit the amount of time we speak, or do you want us to just keep going and going and going?
Well, I think this is the big one, instruction. And so Valerie's going to pick up with fiscal, and we won't spend as much time on those as we are
At our
here.
regular meetings, I'm down doing the time.
I know, where's your time?
Mine's there.
Okay,
Before we move on, what is the
Yes.
4th column for?
well, we're going to talk to staff about that. do we have, it depends what goes in the third column, really. Are the actions we could do actions, we can do activities, we can do metrics, we can do who's responsible. I mean, there's a lot that could go in that, but we're going to work with staff on that part. Because you're right, it has to be measured. We have to know whether we're really doing it. It's nice to say an aspirational, mission statement, but then how do you know the kids are really doing that?
It seems to be that our LCAP has a column with the actions and goals, and then a column with metrics,
Mhm.
so that you know how you're measuring
Mhm.
each item. And we have not been very good about our metrics in the past.
All right, Michelle?
Just say, is there a reason you're limiting it to 4 columns? Like you might need
We
a
could
metrics
come back
column
with
and you
five.
might need
Right.
an actions.
Right.
Well, you have actions, but like,
Mhm.
or what does this look like?
Mhm.
Or who,
Yeah.
or what does this look like when you see it? That kind of
Mhm.
thing. And then a metrics.
Thank you.
I don't care
Okay.
how many columns you have, you better, it has to have metrics. It has to have something we're going to achieve at a certain time.
Great, thank you. Okay, Valerie, do you want to take on fiscal?
Yep.
And let's take a little time check here. It is 7:20. And we were going to be done with this section at 7:40. So we know that we took the big one already, so we can go on to fiscal. And maybe we'll limit it to one go round from the board. Just if you can keep your comments a little briefer, that would be helpful. Thank you, Jim, even without a timer. Good.
Well, like the instruction, we're definitely going to be checking back in with staff. And when we finished the fiscal, I immediately thought of what's Mark going to think? So just to say again, that this is a summary of a lot of information that we read. It isn't necessarily, this is the way we think you should be doing things. This is a summary of a lot of things that are happening in the district. And it is certainly not coming from a position of any particular expertise in these areas. This is what we found in the documents that we read through. So the first priority, operational alignment and consistency. I mean, that's one of the North Stars. Coherent and aligned systems result in targeted use of funds in support of your identified priorities. We're always looking for, and the LCAP does this with millions and millions of dollars, how much money is being spent to further specific goals. You see that in the LCAP. Do we have a process for that? What does that look like? Are we doing it all the way through? Number 2 is accountability, evaluation, and continuous improvement. This is another thread and theme that we see really all of these. What is the clear and measurable fiscal process that we're going to use to ensure the alignment of resources to student success? This is the equity piece. How do we know? How do we know that we are aligning our resources and budgeting in the way that we need to be in order to move that needle? Number 3 is financial management, resource efficiency, and sustainability. A lot of these feel the same, by the way, in this particular area. Maximizing the impact of available resources, reserve capacity, long-term debt ensures financial viability. So this is the financial viability. This is some of the work that you're doing right now with right sizing. Facility planning. This was actually an area that we didn't see a lot of, but we've heard when we've listened to board meetings and we've heard the information about, your facilities plan. Facilities master planning is used to identify school facilities needs, modernization, and new construction across the sites and district. We felt that that was important in here because that certainly does align with the number 3 North Star of schools, climates, and what do schools need to look like in order to be the best environment for learning for students. And number 5, equity and access. Here it is again. The LCAP links the educational goals with the budget to support student success. That's what the LCAP was designed to do when it
started in, I want to say 2013. Am I right about that, Kathy? 2013. I remember filling out, trying to figure out what the state wanted. And it's, because it's been around 13 years, you might see some changes. Potentially, I don't know if the state has talked about that, but 13 years is a long time for a planning process. But you do use that document to, align the monies that you're spending that are going to ensure that support for students. Transparency, communication, and trust. We talked about this quite a bit, that, many districts that we've worked in, when we do focus group work, when we talk to staff, when we talk parents, this is the thing that comes up first. And it didn't necessarily come up first. It's number 6 here, which I think is a testament to the district and its finances and your reporting on that and the work that you're doing around being consistent in communicating and really valuing that transparency. So that's why it ends up, kind of being number 6. It's there, but there still needs, work that needs to be done in terms of understanding, especially the budget that you have here in Santa Clara Unified. So, questions? Andy.
So one of the things I think I always have a little tension with is that you have to balance your budget. It's on. Would you like me to speak louder? I can do that. Okay, there we go. So one of the things I've always had a little tension with is this: we have to balance our budget. I mean, that's just fiscal reality. We have no choice about that. But we also want to be careful about not making financial choices because it's efficient, et cetera, but to the detriment of the students. And so I don't know how you capture that in here. There's many times, like for instance, we talked about some programs, I won't mention the names, keep the politics out of it, but some programs that only serve a very small group of people. It's very important to them. And on a per student basis, it looks exorbitant. But for those kids, that's genuinely needed and it's equitable, okay? And then sometimes we see us doing things where we're cutting something and really we should, it's hurting the kids. We should not do that. We should cut something else, something farther away from the kids. And so it's a really difficult struggle. And I don't know, you've made a few comments in here that I think try to address that, but I'd like to find some way to have more clarity on that if it's something that we need to do for our students, it's what they really need, we're going to find a way to do that. And we'll still balance the budget. We may have to do it some other method. And I know right now with the right sizing, this is a dangerous conversation to have. But at any rate, let's go with that.
Thank you. Nikki?
Thank you. One of the things that I have been thinking about since last night is this dance I feel that we do as a board between fiscal stewardship and getting into the weeds. Because sometimes when we delve a little deeper into some of the things that we're like, why is it that way? It's like, no, you're getting into the weeds. Okay, and so I guess it would be interesting to have a line, like where is our responsibility and when is it not our responsibility? Because there are some things where it's like, is that my responsibility or is that staff's responsibility? But then sometimes when you see things and you're like, this doesn't look right. What is your next course as a board member in that situation? So I think I've felt this tension, I don't know if anyone else has, between this oversight versus getting into the weeds. How do you balance that, And so, especially when you look at like the priorities, operational alignment and consistency, accountability, evaluation, and continuous improvement, financial management. What role and this is why we have all those governance trainings and things is I don't think that it's very well defined as to when are we overstepping and when are we governing?
Great questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we went through with you guys recently and helping find our wonderful superintendent. We had that conversation even in the context of that. And, you know, we always have to remind ourselves that the board has one employee. We hire one person and that's it, you know, and then we depend upon that person to do the things that were important enough to us as a board to hire that person. And so we're always in that process of trying to do our role in terms of the public who elects us to be here because we're here to represent them. If we don't ask the questions, who will? It's our role for the community that we represent to ask the difficult questions, the hard questions, the uncomfortable questions. That's part of our duty. We have the fiscal responsibility, which is our duty as board members, that aspect. Sometimes in the process of doing that, it's quite easy to step into the weeds, you know, and that's really where we depend upon a good relationship with staff to help us in that regard. You know, if we're starting to step into the weeds, we have some really competent people that can kind of get us back on track. But I think it's just having confidence in the quality of our team and not to be afraid of hard topics or difficult topics, because again, if we don't address it, who will? I mean, that's why we're here.
Kathy. So in preparation for today, I did a ChatGPT search on board responsibility and strategic planning. And I got to say, everything that you're saying and everything on these sheets is spot on. That ChatGPT is telling me the same thing. So I really, I don't know if you copied from, if I'm just, no, I'm just kidding you. No, but it's just amazing that everything that you're saying is ChatGPT was telling me the same thing today. So thank you. Yeah, it exists. It is a compliment.
Thank you.
Okay. Another comment on that. Mark. Please.
I wanted to say thank you because oftentimes when you see strategic planning, you sometimes see fiscal involved, but rarely is anything mentioned in regards to facilities or anything else. And so when I was reading this and I saw about the operational alignment, I thought that that was really key to make sure that we have that operational alignment because so much of those other operations have an impact on kids as well. And so to that end, I think that there may be an opportunity, and there's no way to cover every single place in that operational alignment, but there may be an opportunity to broadly include another category to cover things like nutrition services and transportation and those other programs that also have an impact on kids and meet the needs of students as well and are so vital to many of our systems and our students in our community. And especially with the change in the nutrition services program as mandated by the state, that's going to be one of those things that as we go forward, how do we make sure that we have that aligned? How do we make sure that we keep it focused on our students and create the right space for that as we move forward as well? So first, I just want to say thank you because oftentimes in strategic planning, you don't see those things included. And then also there may be an opportunity to even expand on it even further.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to try something different. On the next one, which is the third sheet, just because of time, I'd like you to read through the priorities and the beliefs really are the two. And then if we can take any comments. So we're on safe, inclusive, and courageous climate.
and take a look at the priorities that we've identified and then the belief statement, and if you have any comments about that. You know, the reason why it's there is because it's in so many of your plans. It's, you know, really, it's on your website, it's in your plans, it's a lot of places, it's on the wall. Yeah. Did he? Yeah. So that's why.
I think Andy did that. It was Andy.
So how about any comments on the safe, inclusive climate? Anyone who, you reading it? Yeah, I didn't know if you read it already. Okay. Vicki, do you want to start?
One of the things I noticed was that there is quite a bit of overlap with academic excellence.
Mhm.
And it does have students first, but in thinking about Bonnie's confession, I think sometimes we become afraid of terms that have been weaponized. And does that make the term bad? I don't know. But as far as do we all need reminders sometimes that the students are why we are here and should be possibly? But sorry, I need to take a breath.
Okay.
But I did want to point out one of the things that I noticed in both that we didn't get to talk about is the professional development for adults, expertise, learning, and just how that for me, it's so important that that is focused and intentional. PD, not just to check a box, but PD that actually is leading to a very specific outcome. Early in my career, I was fortunate to work under a director who was very determined to have her psychologist skilled in a variety of things and her teachers skilled in a variety of things. And so that's how she planned her PDs and invested in that. And it was interesting because when she was moved to a different department, we kind of saw the unraveling of where there used to be like this kind of consistent knowledge amongst the special educators that slowly, because we weren't having that consistent intentional training, it dwindled away.
Okay.
And so I think just making sure it's there is a reason why we are saying, come, take this day out of your life. It's not for us to check our PD box, but is what is the reason for this?
Thank you. Jim or Michelle?
I was just gonna say, I think there's a different, I appreciate that idea about a term being weaponized. For me, I saw it, seeing it here, and Jim and I just talked briefly about it as we were kind of reading through it. I think it's the idea that I don't think I want to see students first as the North Star, but I do think here we should be open to, as part of decision making, that students are first in our decision making. So I think it's used in two different ways, and I'm okay with it here. Just me as one person.
Thank you. Jim?
Karen, she'll remind me about the microphone.
Mike.
Oh, is it on?
on.
It's, okay, sorry. For me, so we're looking at safe, inclusive, and courageous climate. For me, every student in our district is entitled to a safe campus. I mean, in these days, in these times, if we don't discuss these things because obviously it's not something we want the general public to know, but we want as board members, no question, that every classroom and every campus has the same level of safety in this very dangerous world.
Thank you. I'm adding that to number 3. Bonnie?
I do want to see us use the students first as a guiding principle, but what my issue is the explicitness of calling it out as a core value, because I don't think it adds anything, because it's so generic and cliche that how does that guide action? I would rather see it like, what structures do we use in our district that ensures that students are first? Is it differentiated instruction? Is it allocation of resources based on need? Is it personal, pathways to instruct, personalized instruction pathways? Like, I would rather have more specific statements that show students first than just explicitly saying students first, because that can be interpreted to mean anything. Anyone can say that something is students first. So that, I'm not saying I don't want to use that as a guiding principle. I just would like to see it less generic and embedded throughout everything we do, as opposed to being something to point to on a wall.
Can I ask you, do you think, in your opinion, as a board member and maybe a parent, was that kind of like a motto that has carried over? Is this something that's new in the last few years? Because we did see it in quite a few plans, and we see it on your website.
I don't know
Don't know where
it
it came from.
originated.
Yeah.
It's always bugged me.
Kathy,
So-
do you know? Kathy, do you know? Other Kathy.
It was on our original values. However, it became more prevalent and of course up here when we did Vision 2035. And I
Okay.
think that's when now people point to it because it's up here and it's the first
see.
one.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Kathy.
Thank you. So going back to number 6, and the student success is a collective community effort. I would like to see that broken down because we're talking about the students and they are important stakeholders in this. We should ask them, what does student first mean to them? And to get an idea of how that could be broken down a little bit better and just because I think that if we're going to be talking about students first, we should be talking to them and getting their input as well.
Very good. Thank you. Jody?
Well, one thing that's called out around the well-being is about kids' mental and emotional health. But one thing that I think is missing, we had a student suicide that was related to bullying. And I would really like to see something added that talks about preventing the bullying, not just the mental health of the child being bullied. And I don't feel like that part of it is called out, like the education you can do to kids about the, you know, the importance of words. You know, words mean something, and when you say something, the damage that it can cause, and offering more intentional work at what students may just be ignorant about.
So are you suggesting this as work to do with students? The importance of words and the damage it can cause. You're thinking working with students around that.
Primarily, that, I
Okay.
mean, that's what I was thinking.
Uh-huh.
Then when you say it that way, I'm like, do our staff members, I mean,
I'm not saying that. I just wanted to make sure I got it down the right way. Okay.
I think I was thinking about students
Mhm.
especially,
Okay.
and how school is where they may learn it somewhere else, but
Mhm.
school is where they act on it.
Mhm. Thank you. Andy?
Oh, darn, sorry. I don't know why I have trouble with that. I don't have trouble up there. But anyway, there's a lot of programs out there that I think benefit our kids, and there's some that we provide. We provide a lot of sports, music, different types of things after school that are officially part of the school curriculum. But the community also provides a lot, and some of them are from nonprofits, like scouting and 4-H and things like that. There's some that are from the city where they have the skate park and they have different programs. The city also does Roberta Jones Theater, and there's a lot of these things. I think that one of the things we should spend some effort on is helping our students be able to get into those programs and
Access them.
remove barriers that prevent them from being able to get to those and access to those. Because those are effectively free for us, at least, ways that we can improve the students' experiences.
Thank you. Great. I think I got everybody. Okay. Should we try the same way on the fourth one? And then we're going to take a break after this.
That door should be unlocked. Because it's a public meeting.
Valerie was writing on the podium and it sounded like a knock. Oh, is that what I was doing? Oh, it was a knock. Oh, wasn't it? Sorry, I just. Okay. Let's go for comments on systems, communication and accountability. Again, you're beginning to see the overlap in some of these areas and within the area. This is something that is often comes up in larger systems. And we're aware that there's been an awful lot of things done around this and that plan is being consistently looked at, and I think maybe coming up on the end of the third year plan, a communication plan.
Sorry.
Oh, I didn't mean to look at you.
It's my
Jen.
first
I'm
time
just
tonight.
saying that some
Yes, we're
things were just recently done. Some were a few years
going
ago.
into 2028 and 2029, some of them. So I was just, it's like you were listening in on my side conversation with Mark, that some of these things are, my tech director colleague behind me, Joe Ayala, and I, some of these things were implementations, things that are kind of we're towards the end of our implementation plan with consolidating communication platforms and website platforms, and it doesn't quite capture. So that's when we'll get to the action and metrics and things that we're planning to do 2 years out from now. Some of these things will continue going forward, need to be refined and for further audits for refinement, but there's some things in here that we'll want to add in terms of things that we want to do around culturally relevant communications, for example, and things where we want to get a little bit tighter and have some specific strategies, because we can apply our multi-tier systems of support to communication too, right? And think about, Melissa's proud of me. But we can think about, what is tier 3 look like for, tier 1, 2, and 3 look like for different levels of communication across our system is kind of where we're going in the next iteration.
Great, and that's why we're really excited to talk to staff about these areas. But board comments. Andy?
So, I don't know, pick on one, I guess. I'm not sure. It may apply to multiple areas. But one of the things I think it's really important is to let people know where the limits of transparency are. I think we should be as transparent as we could possibly be. I want us to share everything we can with the public. I don't want there to be secrets. Unfortunately, there are legal and privacy reasons why some things have to be kept confidential. And I personally hate that aspect of this job because I struggle with it. Not that I struggle with knowing half the time I can't talk because I can't remember whether or not I can talk. So I just don't do it. But I think that setting those expectations so that people understand, okay, well, look, we're not going to talk about personnel matters. I'm sorry, it's just not on the table. We're not going to do that. We're not going to talk about some of the lawsuits. We're not going to talk about some of these other things because we can't do that. We're not going to talk about negotiations because we're not allowed to. So I think those things, there needs to be part of the communication plan needs to be, or the transparency needs to be establishing the limits of what the district and the board members and other employees can actually share and talk about. I think there's opportunities for us to be more transparent than we currently are. And in some cases, like for instance, one of the things I've never felt really comfortable with is I've gotten maybe 1,000+ emails, okay, in the last week or two. The only person who sees those, sometimes they're copied to other board members, but is me. Those may affect my decisions up at the dais. I think everybody should be able to see those communications, what people have been telling me. So if you look at the city of Santa Clara, when those communications go into them, they're all posted. They're posted with the agenda. I think that's an opportunity for us to add a level of transparency to what we're doing. I think the other thing I think about this is I even drew a Venn diagram at the top of this because to me, there's so much overlap in a lot of these topics here with other ones. You know, we look at, what is it, 5, equity, belonging, cultural, responsive practice. There's a gigantic overlap with that one and this entire other topic, okay? So one of the goals on all of these, not just this one, I think we should do is look to minimize and reduce duplication. And actually, ChatGPT is pretty good at helping you do that, since we brought it up earlier. But those are my comments for this. The other thing is that I recognize that the high level stuff will be there. These type of detailed aren't going to be employed by every teacher's not going to know this and extent. There will be people that have specific responsibilities. For instance, communication, obviously Jen's department is going to have a large part of that load to make sure that happens. And the average teacher or the average janitor doesn't need to know it all. So I would want to be careful that we don't overload people and keep the high level message simple, something that people can internalize and quote back to you. Okay. I would love to see it, but we walk up to people and say, you know, what's our general plan? We're going to do this, 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 and this. Okay, great. Let's go forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mike.
Jim.
So, I mean, and this covers a lot of areas. Number one, we have a great PIO, fantastic. And what she does for us all the time is branding, marketing. It's how we look to the community. And I think as board members, you know, we have to be very thoughtful about, and I really do think a safe route, really. We have the Brown Act. We have, you know, things that Andy's mentioned, things that occur in closed session. There's just a lot of things we can't talk about. So, and as hard as it is to imagine board members choosing not to talk, a lot of times we should choose not to talk because there's a lot of things that we shouldn't be talking about at all. And if we go into that vein, it's very easy to stumble and maybe go somewhere you shouldn't go, which goes back to the fact that we have a great PIO. She is putting our image in front of the community in the best way possible and far better than we would individually. Going into another area is just in technology itself. You know, as board members, when we see email, you know, we'll see things that are clearly hacks, that are clearly scams. We had an issue some time ago where we were blasted, an email blast that was clearly, it was a legitimate email. It was something that was discovered to be of ill intent, and they were not legitimate emails. But there's a lot going on. We deal with it in our own lives with, you know, we're blasted with spam phone calls, blasted with all these things constantly. And so I think protecting, in terms of our communications, just keeping that technology as safe and secure as possible. And that's a big issue. And as a board member, and another area too, in terms of our board meetings themselves, we have the Zoom feature where we let people make comments. The city of San Jose doesn't allow that anymore. And a lot of local government no longer allows that. And a lot of other school districts don't allow it anymore. We don't have to do that anymore. And I'm not saying that we should stop doing it, but I'm just putting it out there that that's an option that's available to us to think about and talk about, because San Jose does not do it. You can watch the meeting by Zoom, but there's no comment section for people in Zoom. You know, and we should think about that because that would save us a tremendous amount of time.
Thank you. Jody.
I don't know how you do this because we have an amazing department led by Mr. Rico. But they don't always read it. And it's like, that's what I've noticed in the last few weeks is that we've done messaging and either it's not consistent to all of our schools or just it's not consistently being read because some of the comments I'm like, I don't know where that came from. So getting consistent messaging where parents know to look, I don't know. I mean, that's your job. So I'm sure that's front and center, but it's been interesting. For number 5, you capitalized 1. I wasn't sure if that was just a typo or if you were trying to point something out to us. Is that just a typo?
That kept coming up, referring to, again, the notion of do all sites get the same thing on, and sort of the silos that.
No, the number, the
Yes, I
letter
see that.
one is all
That
caps.
one was purposeful, meaning we are one
One.
district, not many individual schools, not many individual departments. So yes, it was purposeful, but it doesn't have to stay. We were trying to reiterate what we were seeing in the.
It makes me think it was just a typo. And
Thank you for asking.
or
Thank you
just
for
say
asking.
SCUSD, our district. I don't know, it wasn't clear to me, but I know this is gonna have a lot of massaging in the same way that on number 3, where you say SCUSD is a unified professional organization rather than a collection of disconnected schools.
Sort of a negative too.
Well, it's a negative, and if anything, you need to say unified professional educational organization.
Right.
Because we don't make widgets, we raise students.
Right. Got that. Thank you, Jody. Vicky.
I'm sorry, I know I'm away from the group. One of the things that I immediately thought of, and this was just coming from the perspective as a parent, is how there's this fine line between consistent and regular and annoying communication. And you're constantly balancing that because between the school communications and the teacher communications, which are appreciated, you want those, and the district communications, it can get overwhelming. And so I think that the understanding that that communication is necessary to build trust. I agree. Sometimes it's frustrating, and I'm sure it's very frustrating for teachers when people who need to read the information aren't reading it, and then may come in, I'm sure students do this all the time too, and they come in and you're like, well, did you read what I sent home, And so but that being said, communication is two-way. It's not me communicating out. There has to be some sort of a response. And one of the things that I think we possibly could work on is making sure that we get that communication back. And figuring out a way to do that, even if it's just like, I read this, I saw this, or whatever. I know that, and I'll give you this as kind of an interesting example, and I still struggle with our decision to do this when report cards went digital. I want a paper, we have multiple computers at the home and stuff. I would prefer a paper home, and we decided we were going to go digital, and how do we know the parent got it? How do we, like, all these things? And I know there are schools that still, because of their populations, are doing paper report cards, but just, and I think one of the questions was, well, how do we know? Well, not all parents are signed up for digital communications. And so just making sure that our communication has that loop, that especially for like things where we were talking where why don't the parents know, or why are we getting, I think, how can I say this? If we're in a board meeting and you're sitting there going, how come they don't get it? How come they don't get it? They must not have read. You can sit there and say, there's something wrong with them, or you can go, what is wrong with our communication that they're not reading it? Or what is wrong with what we've communicated that is not being understood? Because if enough people aren't understanding, then you have to look at the message you're sending, because the onus is on you. Am I making sense?
Thank you. Good notes. Andy, you look like you might want to say something. Okay. No. Thank you. Before we take a break, I'm sorry, is there anything else on this? Kathy, do you have a comment?
Since you asked, if I agree. You know, the communication is very important. I mean, being transparent with the community. If, but if there's frustration or, you know, concern that people aren't getting the message, is there a way that we can monitor the progress? So, and is there a way that we could get quarterly reports with data reviews to show us exactly what's working, what's not working, and then, you know, not spinning our wheels or, you know, having the staff waste resources as a result of people are not reading what the district is working hard to put out there. But at the same time, I do think it's important that there is an annual public progress report that the community does know what's happening in the district and just sees the direction, you know, that we're going in, again, with the goal of being transparent.
Thank you. Jim?
You know, in business, like for example, cold email outreach, like, you know, HubSpot, those kinds of platforms, you know, the rule of thumb is you don't just send one communication. That's not going to work. We all know in our own lives that, you know, our inboxes are just filled. And then when you throw in the components of like social media outreach and all that type of work, so you have to communicate, and over communicate. That's just a fact. That's our lives today. You know, we have so much coming into our lives on our phones and on our desktops, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The only way you're going to get to the top and get that attention is to over communicate. And so I would not say do less. I would say do more. That's the only way you're going to get through.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we take a break, we use this term conceptual agreement. We feel like you've, you know, understood the chart. You've given a lot of great feedback. You see how excited we are to get to the next step of talking to staff. Do we have conceptual agreement that these first two columns where we say priorities and then we say belief, is that something that's working for you? Will that be okay? Andy?
Thank you. I have one comment that goes back to the very beginning. I still don't know where we're going. We've come up with a lot of things that we think are good to get us somewhere. I just don't know where that is. So somewhere in this process, I want us to define what it's going to look like when we get there.
Right.
But everything we talked about, yeah, you've got a conceptual agreement on what's there, except for the fact that I don't know where it's taken us.
Trust the process.
Well, no, I trust, I've been through this process quite a few times and I trust my past experience.
No, we're hearing that. Thank you. Okay, great. Julie?
And are the charts for that idea that we're going to be taking those charts? Thank you. Are the charts working for you rather than just a narrative? Is the chart thing okay? All right, thumbs up. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. That's what we wanted for tonight.
One other thing I wanted to say, right now the charts are fine. At some point, there needs to be what I refer to as a lay version of this. Something that is much briefer, much more conceptual, and I think you can get it. I personally took a stab at it, got it down easily with broad spacing to 2 pages.
And I'm going to come over and get all your
I'll
notes,
give
Andy.
you, I'll just hand it to you.
But we're
Okay,
not done yet.
thank you.
So-
We are not done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not,
We're
just,
not.
this
I
is the
just-
start of the process, so
Right.
we shouldn't try to get in something shorter yet because,
So I agree.
yeah.
And that's,
I just want to say that I have an expectation so that if it comes
Yeah.
up like 2 months from now, 3 months from now, you go, why didn't you say something? Well, I did.
Thank
think
you.
that's
We're a
great.
punchy group. We have 3 hours of sleep-ish.
Totally get that.
yeah. And
Thank you. You've done good work so far. A little bit more to go.
And I
Time to
think
take a break.
that's clearly the charge that Damon has given us, is to come up with 1 to 2 pages, preferably 1, that people will read and know, rather than having big, long, wordy things. This is what we're doing. So that's our goal. We'll see, Andy.
When are we coming back? How long is it?
Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at 8:21.
Huck. Okay, we're gonna move on. And there's noise in the system about the mission and the vision, right? And so we've received a little bit of input on that. So we'd like to, take up more of your time with some more activities around the mission and the vision, but we thought we would start with what are generally accepted definitions of a vision and a mission, because you all are, very well educated on this. I'm sure that you know the difference, but there is a difference. The vision is very aspirational, forward-looking picture of what the district strives to become in the future. Focuses on very much long-term. What do you want for student success? If a vision if you ever arrive at your vision, it's really not a vision anymore. You have to go at it again because it's always dynamic and it is very aspirational. The mission statement, on the other hand, is a concise explanation of the district's current practices and how it intends to work towards its vision. We used to say who we are, Santa Clara Unified School District, what we do, and how we do it. And it helps guide the daily operations and decision-making of the district. So mission and vision are very different. You have both. Many districts have both. Some have one or the other. But what we'd like to do tonight is we have put together for you, and it's in your handouts, some revisions that are based on things that we've read, or based on the notion that it needs to be simple, it needs to be understood. What do we really mean? Revisions are not the end all be all. But what we'd like you to do is think about what captures your attention related to some of the things that you see. Some of that, I think there's probably 4 or 5 different revisions under the vision and the same under the mission. So just take a minute to read those, and what we'd like you to do. Pardon? We did not get these off ChatGPT.
We each wrote 3. Yeah. We wrote them really.
Yes, can you give us 5 missions here, please? What we're really looking for here are things that resonate with you in terms of words or phrases. And if the current vision or mission resonates with you, that's great. What we want you to do is choose 2. It could be 2 of the revisions. It could be the revision and the current, the sort of rise to the top for you. And again, this is an activity where we're just getting your input. We want to see where you're going and what works for you. If none of them work for you, come up with a phrase that does. Mm-hmm. Yes, correct.
Can I also say, it looks like number 2, under the refined vision, there's a grammatical error. All student thrives. So every student thrives, or all students thrive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and look at both. We'll wait a couple minutes. Few seconds to finish your thoughts. Okay, let's start with Jim. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, for what's provided here, under refined vision, I really like number 3, that we will graduate all students ready to thrive in college, career, and life. And then for the refined mission, I just really like number 1. Our mission is to provide an engaging and equitable education where students reach their full potential and are future ready. So those are my likes.
Michelle?
So, right, a little closer. For the vision, I like kind of what we have right there, although as I look at it and read it again, especially with these others, the 2 things, resilient and lifelong learners, I don't know how lifelong learners. I don't know how much of that, especially as we've looked at all these plans and the things that are there, I don't know how much we really focus on those things in what we do. So that's about the current one. I do like from number 1, the academic excellence, and we've talked a lot about that tonight. I like from 2, the idea of thriving academically, socially, beyond graduation. And, you know, and I would agree with Jim about the ready to thrive in college, career, and life. So it's a little bit, that's that same word again, college and career and life. For the mission, I do like the current mission as it stands. I also like from number 1, the engaging and equitable education, the future potential. I did like from number 3, the discovering passions. And one that I didn't see in the mission was about excellence in education. Again, talking about that piece of academic excellence, and maybe finding a way to put that in there as well.
Thank you. Bonnie.
So I don't, I feel like I'm cranky. Well, I am cranky. But I don't really care for either of our current vision and mission statements. They're generic. I think they could apply to any, you take Santa Clara Unified out of that, it could be talking about any district in America. There's nothing unique about them that pertains to us as a school district and what we are. So I would like any revisions that we make address what makes us different and distinct, because to me that's kind of marketing speak to me, and I don't think it distinguishes us in any way. I feel like I would like it to have a community context to it, that talks about how references how we, some of the things that I wrote down when I sent in my comments were I would like it to have like that we're creating people that are engaged with our regional diversity, our technological heritage, you know, and using those things to affect local and global change. Because I think we are a technological hub. We are an innovative community as historically, and I would like to see that that legacy in our mission and vision statements. So I like the word thrive. I just want to understand what that means. Like because thriving could be anything, you know, going to college, getting a job, going into the military. What do we mean when we say thrive? So I'm not sure that I really like any of the refined ones yet, but I kind of know what I would like to see in the refined vision. And then in the mission, I feel like the mission needs to be action oriented. Because right now I feel like both our vision and our mission are very aspirational in how they're written. And they're basically kind of saying the same thing. There's nothing actionable about the mission statement. And so I would like to see it reflect our educational philosophy, our educational methodology, what we do that's distinctively great about how we educate kids. That we provide personalized kind of things we already talked about. We provide personalized supports. We provide we foster inclusive learning environments. We connect the classroom to our environments. Things that I feel like our mission should say, they should be action verbs. I don't know. I want to see a better distinction between the vision and the mission, I guess.
Thank you. Good input. Jody?
Sure, thank you. So for the refined visions, none of them really spoke to me. Number 4, I think, is just kind of silly. It's like, that's not a serious
necessarily
school district. But I think they all need some work. Like ready to thrive in college, career, and life. Are those choices, this one or this one? But I do like the word thrive. So Gemini, which is my Google version of ChatGPT, I said, look at our current website and come up with a new statement, because the first time I tried it, it just repeated what we already had. And I don't like all of it. It's very wordy, but there was a phrase in it that I kind of liked. It says, it's talking about students, and says, and graduate as an architect of their own future. I'm like, oh, I kind of like that one. Because we want, somebody mentioned about lifelong learning, and you would love for the kids to have that zest for continuing to learn and grow. To me, that kind of talks about that, an architect. So that was an interesting choice of phrase. And it even gives a comments on it, and it says, it moves the student from being a participant to being a leader or architect in their future. And so I thought that was really interesting. Then when it comes to the mission, I've kind of liked our current one. I think it covers some things. I think you don't want it too simplistic, like, well, we're going to teach every child every day. That just seems like, yeah, whatever. So I like the equitable, engaging, innovative. So Gemini used the term that I liked, in partnership with our diverse community. I kind of like that phrase, because we are a community in Santa Clara Unified, and we think about our students, and then our staff, and then our parents, and the community, our larger community. We talk about that a lot, about bringing in other community groups. So I kind of liked including that we do it together. Everyone is raising our kids, not just one person. And disrupt systemic barriers was another phrase they used. Disrupt systemic barriers is, I don't know if how people feel about that phrase, but it's an interesting way to phrase about our interest in equity. It doesn't just say equity, which people might just see and go, oh, they've just put in a word. But what really is it that we are trying to say when we talk about equity? And all kids achieving. I mean, we kind of say it so that each student thrives. Does something about all of our kids being successful. There you go.
Thank you. Andy? Oh, I'm sorry. Vicki, go ahead.
So in looking at the current vision, I felt like it was just too wordy. I felt like we wanted to include so much and so many things, and there's so many good things, and like, but it has to be digestible. And so one of the things I thought is, if you took out just the middle portion, graduates of Santa Clara Unified School District are resilient, future-ready, lifelong learners who are prepared to thrive in a global society. That I liked that better than just to take out the think critically and solve problems collaboratively. Because in a way, that's kind of the same as being prepared to thrive in a global society. I like the focus on resilience, because I think that's something, actually the current, as my daughters tell me, they're Gen Z, that needs to be reinforced with them. They are resilient. They can be resilient. And I like that, just because some of these kids have had everything, when they went through COVID, they had everything solved for them. And I feel like part of the thing that's still coming out of COVID is teaching children that they can solve their own problems. And so I really like the word resilient in there because I think that does need to be a focus, not, and a former board member said we need to rephrase the way we approach mental health with them on the campuses, not are you stressed, which you see these signs on them, but let us help you solve your problems, or like, how can you solve your problems? Like focus a positive focus on giving them the tools rather than a negative focus on, I'm so stressed, so that we are promoting resilience and not giving up. So that's just my thoughts on the district vision. As far as the mission, I kind of had the same reaction to the mission. I mean, there was a lot of work put in there. The only thing I didn't like in the mission is because I think it has gotten us off track, is the striving towards innovation rather than not in our current mission, innovative educational experiences. A lot of good educational practice has been around for years. We don't need to be innovative on a lot of things. Yes, let's take advantage of the innovations that actually promote learning, but sometimes these innovative educational experiences are not what our students need. And we can jump on the bandwagon or this bandwagon or that bandwagon, but it's not what the students, it's not increasing learning in reading, writing, math. I mean, those are the big ones in the elementary level in science. And so I would take out that innovative because I think it distracts us from what I would call excellent educational teaching, like that first, when we talked about academic excellent instruction. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you. Kathy, then Andy, or Andy, sorry. I'm just,
By the time the day's over, I'll get this right. So, I've struggled a little because I've actually been in a corporate session where we did 2 days, 2 full days on a mission and a vision statement. That's it. And one of the things that allowed you to do was to really dig into what differentiates you from everybody else. A corporate mission statement too is a little different because you're trying to find competitive edges in this type of thing. But we want to be competitive with and prove to everybody we're better than all the rest of the school districts in the world. So I think that's still applicable. What I think we're missing in here to some extent is what differentiates us from every other school district out there. You said that there was a pretty generic phrase. You could put another name in there and it would be just as acceptable. So I also think that sometimes we're working, and I agree a lot with Trustee Fairchild. I got your name out and everything. That we're maybe trying to be too cutting edge with what it is. You want to say that all our kids are going to be phenomenal and do wonderful things, and they're going to be the best of the best. Some of our kids are going to become plumbers and air conditioning contractors in vocational areas, and that is absolutely the right thing for them to do. Okay. And you don't want to create this sense of pressure like, well, okay, you didn't live up to the mission statement. So I know in a past one we had, instead of thrive in the mission statement, we had succeed. For every student to be able to succeed in an ever-changing world. Thank you. Appreciate the help. Do keep in mind we're on 3 hours sleep. The other thing is, for us to do this on 3 hours sleep, I'm not sure you're getting the best of our abilities.
this is going to be the last you see it.
I understand. So as far as the stuff you've got here, I'm not terribly fond of the current mission statement. It could work. If we had to pick from the ones that are refined, I would actually put number 2 and number 5 together. And Santa Clara ensures the student thrives academically, socially, and then still to thrive or in my case, to succeed in an ever-changing society, which is off of the backside of number 5. As far as the mission statement, I actually like one of the older mission statements is Santa Clara Unified to provide equitable, engaging, innovative educational experiences so that each student thrives in a global society or succeed in a global society. I don't care. That could work. And I don't think that is our current one.
No, it is.
Is there a current one? Okay. Yeah, it's fine. I'm 3 hours sleep. But none of these are really exciting me, okay? I'd like to see something that has that ability to encompass everybody and still differentiate what it is, what's special about Santa Clara Unified? What do we do and excel at that nobody else does? And what do we want to excel at where it differentiates us from everybody else? So anyway, that's my late night thought.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Kathy? Thank you. So for the refined vision, I like 1. And by the way, I use my brain for this one. I'm not using any AI to help me with this. So, I like number 1, schools committed to academic excellence and cultivating. The word cultivating, I was thinking I would like to see a different word because to me, cultivate, I envision people growing crops. And even though we are raising children, I think it could possibly be another word. But I do like well-rounded individuals. And the reason I do is because years ago, I remember hearing on NPR, they were doing a story about how colleges, in many cases select students to attend the college, and they look beyond academics. They look for well-rounded individuals, and so I think that's why I like seeing those words in there. So I like 1 and I like 5. Again, as I think a couple of folks have expressed, we are in a very diverse society right here in Silicon Valley. And as the world gets smaller and smaller, I think that having our students to be ready to thrive in that kind of a society is really important. So, which is why I like number 5. Going on to the refined mission. Oh, I actually like 1, 3, and 5. And I can't say why I like one more than another, but I think each one really expresses, what this district stands for. I did like number 4, but I thought it was too simple. We need more words. So without really any explanation, I like 1, 3, and 5 for the refined mission.
Excellent. Thank you. Jim?
That's a neat catch. And the cultivating well-rounded individuals, the crop connection,
Well, we
cultivating.
feed them with great ideas and they cultivate.
But really, cultivating well-rounded individuals, that's like the twilight zone. That's like
The fruit of their labor. That's it.
Wow. Great job on that. We thought that might take a little longer, but you've given us a lot of really great information. So we really appreciate that. Can I say something? Yes.
So, in thinking about your vision and mission, I'd just like to say when this was written, when they were originally written, it's our understanding that a large group of people, like 100 plus, spent months on it. So the idea was to come back and look at it and say, could we refine it? Could we tweak it? So we gave you some other ideas so you could think about those as well. But you had a lot of people who liked the mission statement as it stands. There wasn't really anyone who was too keen on the vision, I don't think, the current vision. Why don't we give a little thought to that mission statement and see, is there a way for us to tweak it or for you to tweak it that would roll off the tongue Damon, I know you're tired, but that's kind of your idea, right? That you're trying to get it so that people it rolls off the tongue. Andy,
The biggest change I would have, I don't know about rolling off the tongue, the biggest change I would do is the last little paragraph of this phrase. Instead of thrives, I'd make succeeds, and I do like the phrase an ever-changing world. You may not need to succeed in a global society. You may be local here, but the world is always changing, and you need to be able to adapt and make those changes. And you need to, you want to succeed. That's what you want to do in life. And whatever success is to you, you want to be able to do that. We want to make sure, whatever your level of success is, that when you get out of our schools, you can do that. Whether it's to go to college, or whether to go to vocational, or whether it's to become a poet, or sit up in the mountaintop and meditate, whatever it is. Succeeds in an ever-changing world, which is going back to an old one we had.
can you the whole provide equitable, engaging, innovative?
I'm not crazy about innovative. I'd take that out, but I'm not sure how to replace it. So that was Vicky's idea. So let her wordsmith that part.
I would agree with, just chime in on I would agree with getting rid of innovative, because I don't want innovative for innovative sake, but excellence might be important to add.
I wonder if you have two very similar ones, but you've removed the word innovative. If there would be a reaction to them, to people noticing that you've removed that word. Like, does that mean, oh, you're purposely getting rid of innovative because you want to be like the 1950s?
Michelle's idea of excellent is really good.
Is there a different word
Excellent.
instead of just taking it out?
Ever-changing world.
So
Bonnie,
I remember that, ever succeed in an ever-changing world.
You're saying an excellent educational experience?
So where it says in the mission, provide equitable, engaging, and then you're keeping all the E's, excellent educational experience. So,
No, I'd be good with
yeah. Can I just say, though, I'm a huge fan of the Oxford comma as we look at the.
thank you.
Bonnie.
Oxford comma is in it. Okay, then,
Okay, good.
yay, then let's.
And why is it missing? Is it,
I will say that I'm a fan of the Oxford comma too.
it is
But-
right there.
Julie is not.
All over the place, yeah. So
Bonnie?
I hope I've got it here, Andy. Santa Clara is to provide equitable, engaging, excellent educational experience so that each student survives.
Thrives.
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 No, I think you wanted to.
No,
say
succeeds, sorry.
survives.
You want them to survive.
Bonnie has a comment.
And that was a collective effort. I don't get credit for it.
One of the phrases that I come back to is developing the full potential of every student. Because that to me is you're getting them to where they need to be, whatever that is. We're not telling them it's college. We're not telling them it's career. We're saying we are going to develop the full potential of every student in Santa Clara Unified. Our mission is to do that through, and I think going back to the North Stars that we talked about of culturally relevant instruction through partnership, school, family, community partnerships. Like, I think the mission statement needs to say what we do, right? So the mission the engaging and innovative educational experience is just so vague. So I keep coming back to wanting something like culturally relevant instruction, equitable access to enriching opportunity. I don't know, I'm not gonna sit here and wordsmith it, but inclusive learning environments. I would like to see us identify what we do to get every child to reach their full potential. I would like it to be more specific than how it is now reads like a vision, not a mission. So I would like to see it have, we do this, and we do this to help every child reach their full potential. And whatever those three things are, or whatever, however many we put in it. But I think I also agree, I don't like innovative. I do like thrives, but I like full potential better than thrives. And I agree with Andy that I don't like global society. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Bonnie. Vicky?
I noticed that Mr. Jackson had his hand up. Is there something you wanted to add?
Mike.
Don't have to go up anywhere, just hand him a mic.
I agree with what Bonnie said, or Miss Lieberman said, in terms of it should be definitive, like what we do, not what we strive to do in terms of the mission. So I had a stab at it and I wrote, Santa Clara Unified School District provides equitable, engaging, and inspiring educational experiences so that all students thrive in an ever-changing global society. Or you could change inspiring to culturally inclusive if that's what you want. Just a suggestion.
Get that? Oh, you're gonna get this paper and write it down.
I like the inspiring a lot.
Byron?
The last part, not so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Vicky?
I really like what Ian just shared.
What was that?
Oh, sorry. We were talking about the mission and Ian just shared his revision. I love the word inspiring. To me, whether we say ever-changing world, global society, they're so similar. It's not a hill that's really important to me. However, our society here is very much from all over the world. So I kind of like the global society because that's one of I feel the benefits for my children being raised here is the experiences that they have just with their peers are amazing. And I'm almost jealous.
That's what I was wondering, is get it the diversity into there?
Instead of Santa Clara Unified School District?
No, instead of like in a global society, I think maybe
In our diverse community.
An ever-changing diverse community.
Maybe we don't need the ever-changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
New York City's not diverse at all, so.
You say a diverse community.
Well, it's not our it's a diverse community.
A.
How big is the community?
it could be it's a community.
Yeah.
It could be any.
No, make
No,
it a community. Get your articles.
I don't want to sit here with a mission right now.
Oh.
She's gonna get hurt.
We only have.
I don't want.
Thank you. You've given great input and move
Okay,
into
okay.
the last part of our agenda.
Okay.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Jackson.
Mr. Jackson.
He's an English teacher. If he used ChatGPT, I would go home and tell my daughter that he used it and she's in his class. So
If he used ChatGPT, you'd have to correct the grammar. It's horrible.
So like,
So our last activity tonight is look at students first. And this was an attempt, and you know, we don't have to spend any time on that. But take a moment. Their attempt to see. What is that? So this was our attempt. Value and core values and put it into bullets so people. And this was an initial, we thought we'd do this as an initial conversation, but we really can put this off until next time to talk about it a little bit more.
Can I ask,
Mhm.
what would you do with something like this where it's a list of things? Because it doesn't lend itself to an 8.5 by 11 poster or whatever. You know, it's like, I know that quality teachers and training them and retaining them and well-being, all of these things are important for students, but I don't quite know what the purpose is of this material.
We don't have your values here tonight. That is a synopsis of your values. If you remember, there's a big, long paragraph about each one of those. And so it was like looking at all of that and saying, is that really what student first mean? And it's just the beginning, you know, it was just an idea we had. We didn't really get a chance to talk to Damon about it, but we thought we'd put the list out there and we can bring this back. After talking to Damon and the staff, we can also say, maybe we won't bring it back, but because we're not sure if we're even going to tackle values, but it was kind of, your values were a lot. Yeah, there's too many, and there's like this trying to define every single thing. And so then we thought, well, is really that all about what we're talking about when we say students first? It's excellence, continuous education, it's equity. It's that, you know,
It's
all those
almost-
words that are up there.
It's almost taking what Bonnie said about not liking the term students first because everyone's interpreting it, is you take it out of the core values and say, well, what are our core values? Because they all are around supporting our students. So you don't need to state that it's students first, but it's like, well, what does it mean to be an educational system? What does that mean to us? That would be our core values. And so I think they're all in support of our students. You don't have to say that the students are first because it's
Don't have
all
to
about
call
the
it that way.
student.
Okay. Well, I see very tired eyes. I know you guys are really tired tonight. Valerie, I think we could probably wrap it up from here.
I agree.
And we don't have to, unless somebody's dying, to make. So our next steps, we're seeing that we're gonna go out, we're gonna talk to the staff. We're going to do revisions to the charts according to what we saw, and we're gonna talk to the staff to fill in those next two lines. I heard tonight that we're going to look for places where we've got professional development in both and get those out. You guys are so tired tonight. I'm sorry. We have, our next meeting is May 5th, and we're going to talk to Damon about ways we can communicate or update with you. If you have time for another board workshop earlier than May 5th, we're open to that. And you'll receive updates through Damon about what we're doing and the progress we're making with staff. Jim,
So you're releasing us because we look terrible.
I see everybody yawning and saying, I'm sorry. Vicky?
There will be ways that we will ask for more input from you between now and then. Might be a quick little, survey that Damon sends out, but you'll be getting updates from Damon.
So when you say that you're going to get input from staff, can you tell me who you're defining as staff? Is it
Cabinet level, unless there are other people we want to talk to, we can find that out.
I'm still putting together the list.
What about labor?
Exactly, they're included. I mean, just basically the educational partners throughout our organization, cabinet, GAM, LAMPS, DAC, PTA, our PTA presidents group, just our various stakeholders. So our thought students, of course, students. But we would not necessarily shop it around and just share the information with our educational partners, get feedback, refine it, and bring it back to the board for discussion.
I asked because I don't think we need to do the level we did when we did Vision 2035,
It's not the intention.
but I do think it needs to be inclusive of more than just the board and cabinet.
I was just going to add that it's May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, so are we going to have tequila or something, you know, to help us get through it all? I mean,
Your house.
yeah, there you go.
Well, we are open to changing the date if that's what the board decides. You know,
You've really
Dave can
gone,
work
you
with
know,
that. Too hard. No.
Yeah, we
Okay,
won't.
thank you, Bonnie.
That was the only one that we can find,
Okay, sorry.
unless there's some schedules have changed.
Okay.
But in terms of educational partner list, we'll generate that list and share it with the board as well, just so you know who we're going to be reaching out to.
You have, just 1 second. You've worked above and beyond tonight. We very much appreciate. Have we accomplished our outcomes as we laid them out at the beginning of the meeting? Great. Thank you. Sleep
Thank you.
well.
Could I get a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved, Rotterman.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, we're adjourned at 9:15. Thank you.